Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead.
Hi, sis.
Hey, sis. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, we're digging into Mr. Pimp My Ride Cannabis Company. Koch brothers come into the industry, and we're hopping over to New Mexico and Virginia because they want legalization now.
Okay, wow. Well, we've got a lot to discuss, but of course, we have to kick things off with the high of the week. And my high of the week, of course, is shouting out my fave, Culture Campus. And I have my little statement button. Sorry, it's on this side. My statement button is here. And what I love about the Culture Campus is that it's, statement apparel for folks like myself who always got something to say. Now I have a mask on and I can tell you with my shirt. I can tell you with my button. I can tell you with my mask. So you can check out the Culture Campus at theculturecampus.com. And yeah, I'm excited to see what they got new on the website.
Yes, well, I love their swag, but I actually have swag as my high of the week as well. This is My Mama Was Everything and Some. Yes. You can't really see the and some because, I'm thick. But ultimately, I love this shirt. They have a bunch of statement shirts and different accessories that you can do. And this is from Mess in a Bottle. So that's exciting. Check them out, Mess in a Bottle. And I am ready to get into these hot topics because they are so juicy.
We got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it, okay?
Okay. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on She Blaze. Yes. Thank you. And the first hot topic is really, really good, okay? We are talking about Xzibit. Now, different generations know he's famous for different things. Personally, my generation, that is Pimp My Ride, okay? So I don't know how you were introduced to Xzibit, but he is now in the cannabis industry, believe it or not. He does have a cannabis brand of flower, but it is receiving a lot of heat, sis.
Well, first of all, I know Xzibit from Pimp My Ride too. Before then, I guess he was a rapper. I'm not trying to do no shade. I just don't recall him that much. And that is my generation. But yes, Pimp My Ride has now decided, like everybody else, consuming cannabis for the culture within hip hop, like they got to figure out their stake and claim in the industry. And so I'm not surprised that Xzibit has a cannabis company. I'm also not surprised that we really haven't necessarily heard from this cannabis company in the ways of equity or other folks like us trying to get into the industry. So, I'm not trying to be shady, but let's be honest, I haven't been checking for Xzibit's cannabis company.
Hello. Well, his company / brand, they're very interchangeable in this industry. And we know that is actually two different things, but let's get into the juice, you guys. Basically, he has a company is called Napalm Cannabis. They have pre-rolled joints, also known as a grenade. And actually, it comes in this like grenade type packaging, interesting enough. Now, he is literally receiving so much heat. Why? Because I guess napalm references the chemical agent that was used during many wars that obviously no one liked. And so really, with all the Asian hate crime going on, because it was a lot of the Asian wars, they felt like it was just inappropriate. And obviously, Xzibit did not read the room. Now, you already know, okay, there are a lot of discussions going on because, these things were banned ultimately from the U.S. Xzibit's explanation for using the word napalm is not that he wanted to offend anybody, but he claims it's a play on old albums. So if you guys know any Xzibit songs from Napalm, throw that down in the chat, because I never even actually heard the song before in my life, but I guess it's pretty popular. ultimately, we already know his marketing team is not very diverse, and it does not, really understand what's happening in the culture of today, and that they didn't mean to offend anybody, but ultimately, they were really trying to do a play on his music.
Well, people got to know your music for it to be a play on it. If Biggie was alive and he was doing something with Rolex, we would understand it because you throw your rollies in the sky and wave them side to side. Like, we can quote something. I can't understand what Xzibit is talking about because I don't even remember him being a rapper. Now, perhaps he should have made a play more on the Pimp My Ride. Even then, nowadays, we have a little bit of sensitivity to words. I'm not full on cancel culture, but I am about culture sensitivity. And as you said, he has a pretty much an all-white marketing squad. It's like, okay, who hired this squad? Is this the MTV marketing for cannabis? Is this what this is? Either way, it doesn't feel authentic to him. I mean, I don't again know what his authenticity is because it's always been under the guise of Pimp My Ride mostly, which is a very curated hip hop experience. I mean, I feel like there are probably lines that I know from real rappers that probably are dissing Xzibit, real talk. Yeah. So in general, I feel bad that he's come into the industry as a result of, his influence in what I call mainstreaming hip hop, and even in some ways co-opting hip hop, right? That he can't capitalize on it because he missed the mark. Shame on him for not kind of doing a little bit more market research. I thought the napalm was because it was like, yo, this flower is bomb. This is like, I mean, that's what I was thinking that. And so that shows even that it didn't initially hit me either, that we're talking about real, something that's really actually happened in our history. And we've got to be sensitive to that. But I get the feeling that I probably would be surrounded by enough diversity that one person, it only takes one person to raise their hand and say like, this might not go the way you want, especially if it's like all looking like an actual bomb or whatever. Like, I think that's when it actually is a little bit more concerning. If they can't look like kid stuff, I don't think it should look like we should necessarily have cannabis packaging that looks like something that's harmful either. Just my thought.
I am thinking with you on the same things because I really feel like y'all have all this money to do packaging in this way because you already know the packaging for that is not cheap, honey. So if you have that much money to do packaging in these dry pre-rolls that, may have been harvested 24 months ago, I really feel like you could have put more effort into seeing what the internet says, right? Like, you have enough followers that you could do a survey on, what's the next brand? What should be our rollout brand? So I'm really upset at them for not necessarily reading the room, having cultural sensitivity, and ultimately now they're banned, right? Like, there are dispensaries that's like, I do not want to mess with these folks at all, period, poo. And that is because you have offensive like branding, right? Even though it's like when the Black Market Killer came out, that's a dispensary. Like, that really affected us as Black people to have something called Black Market Killer. I'm like, what in the KKK is going on here?
We just got to be smarter. I don't want us to say that everything has to be overly sensitive, but if you are trying to capture market share, recognize who your audience is. And perhaps, like Ramon Richardson said, there are these people who really follow Xzibit's career, remember him as a rapper, can actually indicate there were videos related to it. And the truth of the matter is, I'm guessing that those are I'll be honest, I feel like it's still mostly the MTV culture where you're more of a historian of hip hop. And so then he has this blip in it. And I mostly think that blip is related to Pimp My Ride and basically again, popularizing of hip hop culture in that way. That's my thought.
Right. Well, he definitely distanced himself from his little Generation X because, they are the kings and queens of cancel culture, okay? Not so much Z, in my opinion. But we are going to move move on because we might have to go our second hot topic, you guys. And right now my internet's being a little shaky. So if I cut off, please forgive me. You know, you can only do so much in New York with this internet, honey.
Yeah.
So our second hot topic is about the Koch brothers. Believe it or not, they teamed up with Snoop Doggy Dogg. What is going on with California right now? So yes, the Snoop Dogg and Koch brother, one of the Koch brothers, and another Angelo guy. He's a very famous guy in terms of having a lot of money. They all teamed up together to really figure out how to support legalization. You want to get this, of all drugs, okay? And as they're teaming up together, they are really focusing on the Republican lawmakers and lobbying to get them to sign off and federally legalize. You guys, let it go, let it go.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, if anybody has been following the history of the Koch brothers, you understand how much influence that they have. You also understand that they do have a rather large foundation. So I do want to give, you know, reference to where they've given a lot of money, whether it's to the
Black Enterprise.
Yes, Black Enterprise, a lot of Black multicultural outlets, HBCUs through the Thurgood Marshall Fund. So they've not been shy about giving money. Now, what they give on the scale of what they own is still not quite in the same zero range, but we also recognize that they are doing a lot of giving that has been impactful in Black and brown communities. And sometimes some people feel like that's purposeful. So I'm not a supporter necessarily of Koch brothers and all of the different entities that they own. Their history in terms of what they've supported from a lobbying standpoint has been misaligned with really cannabis legalization up until recently. And so to see them pair up with the godfather of cannabis, which is Snoop, I sort of cringe. I say this is that point again where we have a co-opting of a culture and of a messaging with, groups that haven't historically been supportive of that. Now, Koch brothers, I will say, have always given grants for criminal justice related activities, and maybe over a blunt with Snoop, Charles Koch figured out that, there's a connection between the criminalization of drugs, specifically possession of drugs, specifically cannabis, and criminal justice, social justice. Maybe they caught that, and that's why they're doing this. But, in general, I feel like this is the fourth big national coalition that's been formed. They call themselves the Cannabis Freedom Alliance, which I find to be very interesting. The person you were talking about, I believe, is Mitch Angelos, and he actually was someone who spent a long period of time for federal charges related to cannabis and finally let go and put a lot of effort into, starting these different programs that are intended to release people. And, I think on its face value, it's hard to talk junk about that. But when you look at who's come to the table, the fact that people are already doing the work, we don't need another coalition of big heavy hitters trying to convince the federal government. We are already in those same conversations, and we know a lot more about what can be impactful versus what looks impactful. And that's my biggest concern here.
Right. Well, everyone, sound off in the comments. How do you feel about the Cannabis Freedom Alliance coming to the forefront of the cannabis industry, so to speak? And some of the organizations that are supporting them: Americans for Prosperity, Koch brothers founded advocacy group, the Reason Foundation, the Global Alliance for Cannabis Commerce, and the Weldon Project. So these are some of the things that, some of the organizations that have joined forces to, I believe, to really get in front of the Republican lawmakers and senators and express to them. I do think it is important to be able to talk to both sides. I just want to be in the room and see what they're talking to them about. I don't necessarily want it to be performance. If you do have the ability to speak to these Republicans, hey, hit us up. We have some language that will really benefit you to help, to your point, because we've been in the trenches. We know what we need. What you need to do is just get them to say yes.
Yes, but then it's like, what are they saying yes to? Because it's no secret, all of the Republicans oppose the MRTA in New York, right? So we weren't able to sway them. It's just there's a super majority as far as the Democrats are concerned. And let's be real, sometimes when we're dealing with equity, we got to deal with quote unquote white male progressive Democrats, and they exist as well. And sometimes they can be more difficult than the Republicans. But what do we give up when we are negotiating with the Republicans? That's what I agree is important for us to be in alignment on. The Cannabis Freedom Alliance don't understand what I feel are the non-negotiables, in my opinion. And I feel like that's where we start to have the mistakes happen, where you think you're helping, you think you're telling us what we need. And because you got Snoop Dogg, you're like, see, we got your representation. Snoop Dogg hasn't been in a struggle in 30 years, real talk. A celebrity that has made a life out of his hood living and has moved on from it. I don't want to say again to his camp that he's not doing the right thing. He might be behind closed doors, but when it comes time to being in the trenches around the topics that we have been dealing with, cannabis equity came to the forefront because George Floyd got killed in front of all of us, not because Snoop Dogg has been saying, yo, we need equity in the cannabis industry. Like, he's doing the same thing that every big white corporation is doing, which is piggybacking the momentum of that narrative. And that to me is what makes it insincere or feel a little bit inauthentic.
Absolutely. Well, we got a great question asking about, do we think heavy hitters will help them apply pressure to change the law? I don't know. I believe that it's inevitable for them to change the law. We already know that the administration feels like they have too much to do to really focus and push it forward in that way. So we do have to rely on Congress to do their job and to actually push it forward so the president can have something to sign. Do I think if they get the right cannabis bill in front of the president, will he sign it? Abso-freaking-lutely. So that's what we can bank on. I don't know. Like Dasheeda said, depending on what they're saying in the rooms, you never know how it's going to go.
That's the real issue. Yes, heavy hitters are important, but who's backing them? Who's the brains behind it? Where's that industry knowledge? Where's the cannabis competency? No matter how long Snoop has been in the industry, again, not only did I just think I proved that he can't necessarily speak for the other man and the brother man, he's not a science-based cannabis influencer either, right? It's not like they have Dr. Carl Hart on the team, right? Who's a neuroscientist, That's what worries me, is that we don't have the right people in the room. And historically, racist people that give money and make them feel like, well, I'm not racist because I gave. That would be the Koch brothers in some ways to me. And I got to feel like all that together don't make for a good recipe. It don't make for anything that I'm willing to eat. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with everything you're saying, but we got to keep our eyes on them because we may not be able to pay to be a fly in the room, but we need to know what's happening, you guys. So I will keep the tea going with that one. However, we got to move on to our third hot topic because this is a really good topic. It's quite interesting because it deals with cannabis banking, which we know on a federal level, we've been pushing really hard to happen, right? And something did happen, something quite unusual. The U.S. National Credit Union Administration issued a cease and desist in February to Live Life Federal Credit Union. Now, this is the first cease and desist to a cannabis bank. Now, I know we're like, oh my God, we thought that you can't have bank this, and that. But in 2014, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network actually set rules for bank and credit unions to be able to take cannabis cash. Now, they do have to do a lot of stuff to stay in compliance, of course, like, check the business's license, make sure there's no unusual changes. I don't know what that means, but they do have to do this thing called a quarterly suspicious activity report when working with cannabis companies. Now, are you ready to hear the tea, sis?
Yes.
Okay, well, Live Life joined the cannabis space in 2018. By the end of 2020, their total assets reached 69.2 million, you guys. Yes. Now, this is with their 150 cannabis-related businesses. Now, why are they getting a cease and desist, you ask? Well, they could not keep up the pace of growing. Ultimately, after getting on these cannabis businesses, they only added 3 employees, and this is already a startup. We must remember that cannabis has large cash transactions, and the bankers have to actually count the cash. So if you're coming in with a boatload of cash and you don't have enough employees to count the cash, where does the cash go? Well, who knows? But they do know that they did not file their suspicious activity reports.
Wow. And if you count, the 150 cannabis clients, that's over 500 that they have to do in terms of those 2 reports per year. I am really like, on the one hand, I'm really just shocked that we're still being forced into these channels, because everything you just described is why the credit union feels they can charge upwards of $400, $500 in transactional fees to cannabis businesses. So it does trickle down, right? Like, they got to hire more people. They've got to get more capacity. They need to spend more money. They charge more for the account maintenance. And so, yeah, you're not going to find too many cannabis businesses that have an account that they've opened and they're spending the $10 a month, and they just got to figure out, how do I not have the $10 charge? That is not happening in the cannabis space. There's also a lot of fees related to depositing large cash transactions. And so if you don't want to keep a lot of cash on hand on site, and in Oregon specifically, for that jurisdiction, we've been seeing a lot more crime increase since all of the various protests and riots and police activity that's been happening. And so, yeah, having cash on hand puts a lot of risk for your business. That's your operating capital. And you get charged every time you bring that cash into a credit union. But this is the joke of it, right? And that's one side of it. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. And I see why they charge now. But the other side of it is, earlier this year, around the same time that they were receiving a cease and desist, the IRS was complaining about the fact that too much cash is coming in, and why don't the cannabis industry pay their taxes in banking transactions? And I'm just like, okay, they're not paying attention to what's happening. It's on y'all. Like, the federal government has to change this. If y'all are, yes, you collecting multiple billions of dollars in taxes, you might want to give some banking. And the fact that you have to do all of this unusual activities, it's, again, just still that perpetuation that people who are in the cannabis space are doing some sort of harm. They are not business people with integrity. It's still all of these punishments. It's very punitive to be part of the cannabis industry, and that needs to change.
I agree with you completely. I find it hilarious that they're like, hey, you have too much cash. It's like, bro, okay, so no one is reading memos. Got it. Okay, cool. Like, you don't know. Obviously, every branch of the government has no idea what's going on with the other side, because we could have been told you was going to count a lot of cash. Okay, you better have some cash counters, because cannabis is really only dealt with cash. And when you try to not deal with cash, you actually get bank fraud if you try to do it on your own. And to your point, if you do it with the company, you might not even be able to afford to have the account. So, there are a lot of moving pieces. However, the CEO just let them know, we did not do our jobs right. We failed. We did not do it. So they took complete responsibility, hands up. So with that being said, they live life. They are not allowed to open any new cannabis accounts till April 30th, which is quite interesting because you already know April is Cannabis Money Month, as it is Cannabis Awareness Month, ultimately. They also have to do 600 suspicious activity reports for the year of the 150 cannabis accounts. And they must create an automated system by the end of the month as well. So that basically means your banking fees are going to go up because they got a lot of work to do, honey.
They do, but you know what? I'm with Deborah. I would be very upset if I was the customer. So now we're talking about I have my money in this account here. And this is when banks are not doing what they're supposed to be doing or when they're trying to cover their butt. We talked a little bit about that last week with the ease conviction, so to speak, or issue. That is the banks trying to cover their butt. At least we have here, a leader with integrity saying, hey, we messed up. But that doesn't mean that the cost should be then transitioned to the customer, because the customer's already paying the cost. Y'all just not doing your work. And so this is unbelievable sometimes to kind of hear how, we are forced into these channels. Again, can't open a Bank of America because it wouldn't happen in a Bank of America. You're forced to go through the credit union. You got new credit unions, new banks started. I'm always, again, this is an opportunity, though. If you imagine that there is a lot of work in it, but we have opportunity in the cannabis space to use digital currency in a much more efficient way. We have an opportunity in the cannabis space to use community banks, to develop community banks, especially when we think about Black, Indigenous, and Latinx, especially when we think about Indigenous, because there are tribal banks. So I want everybody to understand that we continue to try to look for the solution from the federal government, and we have to push for them. But there are actually some solutions outside of it that we can rely on. We just haven't relied on that type of banking in almost hundreds of years, right? Like 100 years of more new age banking has made us more reliant on the FDIC, and mostly I don't know if they're giving the cannabis industry what they need. But
yes,
there are some laws on the table right now that we can look at.
And I think we have to stop looking. To a certain extent, there's a part of me that's like, okay, we're still doing, do you see how long they debate about stuff? Do you see what they're bickering about and has nothing to do with cannabis? Cannabis is one of their lowest priorities for most people in that Congress. So I think that honestly, too, it's like the solution is y'all need to make an automated system. Who here is in cannabis tech? Who here can create a system that can do suspicious activity reports automatically? Because we just build it. Go ahead and find the right company to build it. We cannot ask the federal government because honestly, they don't know what they got going on right now. And I agree. I love the cryptocurrency. A lot of cannabis things you can buy with crypto. So, definitely keep looking into that because, it's 2021, COVID. Nobody really wants to touch no cash like that.
This is true. We definitely going to have to do probably a deep dive into more about the digital currency options because I feel like that's where we are operating, in some ways already, and I think that there might be some solutions for cannabis operators there.
Well, Giselle, come back and see us because you already know we will put that on a list to do because we got a lot of banking ideas, okay? And like Dasheeda said, we're all about solutions. This main topic is these lawmakers really are trying to give their people cannabis no matter what. So they're looking for solutions as well. Let's get into the main topic, New Mexico first, okay? Believe it or not, New Mexico is tired of not having legalization. They want adult use and they want it now. Do you know how much they want it? They want it so much that they're not even waiting for the governor to sign the bill. Okay, they're already putting their pieces into play. Ultimately, yes. What'd you say?
I just am laughing because it's sort of one of those things where you know your parents gonna say, okay, so you just get started on it.
That is the perfect example. And that's what New Mexico is doing. And so I'm like super, super excited about it. They already went in and launched the website that's, providing information about the new cannabis policy. And I mean, that is a bold move. Now, to be fair, we do know that the governor did promise to sign off about it as soon as she gets it in front of her desk. But realistically, retail sales won't be started until April 22. So they've already just started putting up information because they're like, listen, we know April 22 is around the corner.
It's a year. And for most people, if you're interested, it's going to take you about that much time to be prepared to apply. And it looks like to me that they are doing all the right things. A lot of people sleep on New Mexico. Their legalization bill has a lot of the provisions that we've been fighting for and ensuring, are at least bare minimum. They still have some work to do in the equity front, but the first thing is that there's no license cap. And that's an important equity piece of any legalization. The minute that people start saying we're going to have X amount of licenses, and we can name whether it's on the medical side of things or an adult use, it starts to be problematic. You start to see that we have a forced competition in a way that does not need to be. And it really goes to a money grab as opposed to everyone having an ability to be in a stratified market that has small, medium, large, micro. And they've actually also implemented some of the micro aspects, which I think is interesting because micro businesses in their bill can grow up to 200 plants, which some might say isn't a micro business at all, depending on if you really understand yield and what that could do for you. But either way, I feel like it gives you a good opportunity to get into the market in multiple levels. And the control of the market really comes from, who is going to oversee it. It's going to be open until it needs to be not open. Right. Control boards or commissions can easily add moratoriums, which is what really means a hold on accepting new licenses. And I think that gives you a little bit more flexibility as opposed to it being written in statute that you're only going to have 10 licenses or 6 licenses like Georgia or 10 with the medical in New York.
You are speaking straight up facts, you guys. Sound off in these comments because we are dropping real jewels. Licensing caps are the worst thing ever. They do not give licensing caps to the other adult use things that we have as adults. Ultimately. So it's like, okay, why are you like, oh, we only get 5 licenses or we're only doing 5 in this area and 5 in here? Like that does not work. You cannot make money like that. And you take away people's ability to do their job. And they do have a cannabis control division, and they gave their timeline of when the advisory board is going to be set up, when the business licenses will be issued, and the retail launch. And this is like really just a live website that they are going to keep making iterations to. They're going to put the fees up there. So they're already getting their internet together for you guys. So y'all could plan how to really get your own license in New Mexico.
And there's a lot of opportunity to do so, but also stay engaged with New Mexico. A couple of things that I will call out that are equity centered in their bill still is the tribal governments being allowed to participate. The fact that local municipalities will not be able to ban cannabis businesses entirely. And that's something like in New York, local municipalities can opt out. They can't ban cannabis use, but they can opt out on allowing businesses to get licenses. And we've seen in California how that creates these dry areas or these patches where, I'm going to just call the plug because why do I have to drive 35 minutes and then stand in line for 35 minutes to get something when in that time I could have already had my weed 20 minutes ago. You know what I mean? So I think, and delivered at that. So I think that there's an element of, again, equity in allowing businesses to be everywhere. Not everybody's going to have transportation, right? And one of the things that I call this out in the New York bill, for example, is that, if I'm getting on a train or a bus and whatever I picked up is loud, then it's like, a little bit of a target on my back. Thankfully, we have new rules around what police can do, but I think it can also create some drama just on being in closed spaces. If people are still doing that, I'm not, because it's COVID, but I'm just saying some people don't have that privilege. They have to use a bus. They have to use public transportation. And so that's a ability to get around that with having every jurisdiction having cannabis businesses. The other thing that I will also point out is that they removed some of the equity language, but it isn't gone and forgotten. It's being put to its own provisions and is being repackaged into a separate bill. And I think it's important that we point that out, because a lot of states are always looking on how do they do both. Real talk, you don't have to do marketization and capitalization frameworks for cannabis to start social justice reform as far as cannabis is concerned. You could just stop arresting people. You can expunge. You can start that process well before you start making money. But what we know, and I realize this now as a government official, is that there are some revenue implications when you decide to put energy around doing the right thing, expungement, et cetera, et cetera. And so what are ways that you can offset that is with new revenue, which comes in the form of cannabis tax revenue. I always say we got to do the equation for the state, because sometimes when it's an equation that depletes more, it's hard for legislators to get around that because they don't have the budget for it. But if you come with a budget, and that's what the legalization aspect does, and it's an intentional budget, right, then it becomes more clear, how do we pay for repairing?
Right. And I think it's really important to talk about being able to separate the packages as far as equity and starting a market. Why? Because the government moves as slow as hell, like slow as shit, you guys. I'm sorry, but it do. And so when you put them all together, you're just asking to keep it moving slow. You're slow rolling the process of legalization. If you put them separate, maybe you guys might have the ability to have it move through the assembly and the state, depending on, where you live, a lot faster. Like, it doesn't have to be one and done. You don't have to throw all the stones at the same time. And sometimes when you have the ability to have the market put in place first, you could take the money they already made from the market. You could be like, no, we want that right now, actually. And then we'll, keep y'all moving along with how much y'all should have a year.
Listen, I think you're speaking too much common sense, because you would think that would happen in Florida. Florida, as a state, has made so much money on cannabis tax revenue, and it's only a medical market. So we should not have questions at all about whether or not they can afford to add equity provisions at this point. They've made enough money that they could actually do that. But the politics of Florida prevent those things from happening because it's not a priority, right? And honestly, there are some states where it should be, like New Jersey, and you have to fight for the priority like we did with A21, S21. So what I will say is that people don't see it as enough money to go around. They already have this it isn't even born yet, and they have the new cannabis tax revenue spent. And then they want to turn to the people that have been devastated from over-policing and racially biased cannabis, enforcement of cannabis prohibition. And they basically want to say, so sorry, we don't have enough. What are you talking about? That's the part where I just start getting irate, and then the Brooklyn neck starts going, because I cannot, when it comes to the silliness. You do have enough because it hasn't even come into your pocket yet. You need to set it aside, and you need to do the right thing. And I'll be real, until that gets done, and I will say New York is the first state to really do it all together. Again, heroic efforts. We had to have luck of the Irish on our side, legitimately, for it to get done that way too. So it's a combination of us pushing and luck, but until we see a state really do it, you will consistently see that people feel like it's like, oh, well, the pie isn't big enough. The pie hasn't even been made. So we can make it bigger. And I think it's important for us to call that out from the beginning. We can make it bigger by including the legacy market. Stop trying to exclude or eradicate. I hate those two E words, because that is how you eradicate the whole market to begin with.
Right. And that's kind of how they've been eradicating our whole generation, right? There's like black and brown men that we haven't seen in years for a dime bag, bro. So I don't even know, like, as far as I'm concerned, that's culturally insensitive to black folk to use that word. Okay, so they need to check themselves before they wreck themselves. So I am glad that New Mexico got it all the way together. Okay, they're not playing, and I'm glad we have people willing to stand up to these lawmakers because again, they serve us, the people. That's what their jobs are. Whether they're elected or put in that position, they are meant to serve the people. And the people want cannabis the right way.
They do. And one last thing I got to say, you mentioned, and you were a lot more gracious than I am about New Mexico's governor, because she does plan to sign this. But let me just be real. The real tea is the governor ain't signed it because it ain't formatted in the way she want to see it. So sometimes it's that petty. And I have to like at least sound off a little bit now that I have been almost a year in the government. And I'm just like, we really do be having those type of conversations. Like I have to ask someone to resubmit something in the exact format. And it's not like because we have a machine that reads it. It is because I guess so much is going across a desk that you want to be a little robotic with it. And so the signature needs to be in the same spot. It's interesting, but that's the stuff that we as the people are paying for. And I kind of feel like those are the little things that with nuances we have to blow up. And maybe the lawmakers here in this instance is right, because the governor hasn't signed it for what I consider to be a petty reason. And they like, no, we got real problems we need to go ahead and get solved really quickly. So we're gonna put this website up.
Right. You could just not be the governor. You know, if you could only read in one format, sis, then maybe you shouldn't be the governor, right? This is why the governors, this is why they don't know nothing about no mask and shit, because they could only read in one format. Okay. So this does not sound accurate. Oh no. I thought she didn't read it because I thought she hadn't signed it because they got a lot of things going on. But if it's a format reason, sis, you could just not be the governor if you can't read, honey.
I just thought that was funny, but it's so accurate and I believe it. Like I don't even think that that's like fake news. That's believable with my experience. Some of the things that I have been on, like chains, 19, 20 email long chains back and forth, trying to get the format exact. We're talking about 2 weeks of work for something that should have been 2 minutes. That's the type of inefficiencies that we have in our government. And unfortunately, I think the more we get, wind of it, we got to start calling them out a little bit.
Right. And it's like, this is why our shit get hacked. If it's only one format, it's like easy to keep going through. We might get a whole new constitution on our phone one day out of nowhere because they only can have one goddamn format. Come on now. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, you're my servant. And so I ain't never heard a servant say nothing like that. So I am definitely struggling with what is happening in society, but I am so happy that you threw that tea down for us because we wanted to gag with you, honey. And now we got to get to Virginia because this is the East Coast. I told you when New York moves, we move just like that.
I mean, move, okay? Virginia is like, where did this come from? And it came from the governor's office. So from one governor to another. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, still cautious. But there's a lot going on in Virginia.
Well, it's exciting because we were just talking about Virginia on the first episode of the season because we are on season 5, you heard. And we talked about it and we was like, this don't make no sense. Why 2024? People still gonna smoke. It don't matter if it's decriminalized, blah, blah, blah. And they must have been watching She Blaze, baby, because they went back and they was like, no, if we're not gonna have the market set, people got to get tree from somewhere.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that people were really complaining about is that it felt like a 52 fake out. So you legalized on paper, but the market won't open till 2024. And so folks is like 3 years from now, like what? So this is unprecedented. This is what you call for in Georgia. You want real flower, you want real things, but this is also potentially creating gray markets. So I've got a lot of feeling on this, from the good, the bad to the ugly. I'll start with the good. The good is that Virginia has decided that they're not going to wait till 2024 to ensure that people are able to be in possession of cannabis. You can now possess cannabis. July 1st, 2021, you will be able to possess it as well as grow it yourself. Yes.
Grow your
Yes,
own,
that is
grow
like,
your
I
own,
mean,
grow your own,
grow
grow your
your
own.
own is about to be a serious hashtag. And this is the first Southern state to have this in full effect. And I believe they have grow your own up to 4 plants, which we know in Oregon can be significant. I'll be honest, is lifestyle changing when you are a patient. And yeah, that is amazing. And it came from the governor, that recommended amendment, and it got passed.
Yes. Well, I think it is pretty dope, obviously, as somebody that is like a huge grow your own component. Like when people ask me all the time, they're like, people getting weed from the closet. It's like closet weed, the best weed. It's the super synthetic cannabis that's the Cali pack that's choking you, fool, and not in the good way. You know what I'm saying? So I am the queen of grow your own, and people scientifically, like people don't always know exactly the amount of ounces a plant can produce. So to be able to be like, we're not putting an ounce cap as we've seen in different home grow bills being passed. They're not like, oh, we're going to put an ounce cap. They're like, listen, grow your big 4-ass plants. They also didn't say if it was supposed to be visible or not. I think they're allowing whoever they're going to put in place to really be able to make those decisions. And they really just want people to make common sense. They're like, listen, you can have 4 pounds at home, baby, but you need 1 ounce while you're out. And we're not going to come in and keep checking how many pounds versus ounces you have or don't have.
Tell it like it is. I mean, I think I've been really an adamant proponent of home grow because I've been a patient in many different markets. And the fact of the matter is, I've said this before, whatever's popping at High Times or the latest cannabis cup should not be a dictator of what options I get to choose from. And if the assortment for the market does not provide what I need, then I need to be able to grow it myself without worried about whether or not somebody DEA is going to be coming to kick down my door. At the end of the day, I think that's what home grow allows for. Furthermore, that's the good, the bad. The bad is there's still a lot of extreme racism in Virginia. And even though it decriminalized, same as New York decriminalized in the 70s, we still have a lot of law enforcement that really be like, oh, decriminalization, I'm going to pick up these N-words however I need to. And, even in New York, we had a memo had to get put out, like, this is what you're not allowed to do. And I actually encourage young brothers and sisters to be carrying that memo around, like, bust it up on your phone and be like,
hello, this my ID card.
Well, because I don't know if you got it. Okay.
Right. It's my ID card.
Exactly. But I think that's why it's important for people to understand why it's so important for them to, put these sanctions in place, because people are still going to be harassed, arrested, because the law is not clear. What only thing that was clear when it was legalized is what will happen in 2024, not what is happening right now. Right. And what is happening right now is you have Virginia as part of the DMV, an area where Maryland has a medical market and DC has an adult use market. We basically have people driving through Virginia, even for a split second, with the way it's set up and being targeted. And there's a whole strip that folks who are from that area know exactly what's happening. They know exactly how racist the law enforcement is, and they know exactly what's being used as criminality enforcement. And that, to me, is cannabis. So the governor sort of eliminating that, and I want to say that's a kudos to the governor. And also it speaks volumes to maybe changing politics within Virginia as well. We've got to undo a lot of the harm, and Virginia's harmed a lot of Black and brown folks, indigenous folks. One thing I have to commend is their ability to say also, we heard you, because when the first bill passed, everybody wanted to celebrate with a little golf clap, but then they start reading in the details and they're like, wait, what, 2024? We got to wait till 2024? No.
About to cause a riot.
over
So
the trees.
hello, and DMV is lit. Like that whole DMV is like just a cannabis circle right now, and I am so excited for what's about to happen. We got family in Virginia. We're gonna be doing Thanksgiving in Virginia Beach, y'all. Like you don't even know. So I am like super. I honestly didn't think that they would be able to push this through so quickly either. Like I think that's also that's why I'm more excited and why I'm so shocked as well and surprised, because we talk about it all the time. Things are slow. They really thought 2024 was a good idea. So who would have thought they would have been like, you know what, that didn't make sense. Let us just try to do this real quick.
Well, let's be honest. I want to be clear that they didn't come to that on their own. They did think it made sense because that is what they signed. And there were plenty of senators and legislators who they felt fine doing that because they knew they wouldn't have to deal with it yet. But then over 8,000 emails were sent to the governor's office in support of changing some of these measures and in support of legalization. It's estimated that 68% of registered voters in Virginia also support full legalization. So the governor was not only doing the right thing, he was doing the right thing for his campaign too.
Right. He's trying to get reelected, y'all. He got some presidential ambitions, it sounds like.
I mean, well, we need people who want to be in the role that actually listen to the people. And yeah, there are sometimes a loud minority that continue to hold old systemic racist concepts and theories and want to hold us to them. But we're saying no more. And I think that the diversity in those types of feedback is also key. Another thing that I will point out is the amendment that was sent back to get voted on, which got passed, was around also the sealing of records, which in some states is, where there's no expungement, sealing is the next best thing to allow crimes that involve a misdemeanor possession of marijuana, even with the intent to distribute, because again, we don't really know intent. Intent is something that's highly subjective. They're like, oh, you got more than 3 dime bags, you was trying to sell these. Or rather, maybe that's how you got it from your mans. You never know. But the police has been their subjective opinion to determine whether to add that. So it's important to say that the intent to distribute is part of what can get sealed. And they're starting to do those sealing of records starting July 1st, 2021. So it wasn't just about possession and home grow. It was also about protection of people who are dealing with the collateral consequences of cannabis criminalization.
Right. I love it. We need to see this happen in more states as far as I'm concerned. Like if they can do this in Virginia, they could do this across 50 states. And we united?
Well, some folks would say that we are united, but there's a lot of governors who act like they're the president of their own state, literally, and in some ways that's their role. But I think Virginia is hopefully setting a precedent for the southern states. Texas just passed in the first committee some legislation around decriminalization. We've been working with the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition. We've been working on multiple states. Texas is one of them as well, and Georgia continues to be fine with what they're doing, but that is
about Georgia.
We have to have enough people pushing back.
We cannot talk about Georgia right now. I'm gonna cry all live, okay? There will be sad tears right now. I'm trying to be joyous for these other people. I don't want to talk about Georgia. I'm in New York. I'm enjoying myself with my 420 in the legal state. I don't want to talk about Georgia.
Listen, we're lucky that we have the privilege to move around the country the way we do, and we have family and we have network in all of these places, because I'm definitely looking at a nice little spot in New Mexico at this point. Me, I'm always looking to find a new state. I don't have my driver's license from New Mexico. I've had a driver's license from so many states that it makes me feel like I need to add that. And Virginia, we have family land there, and it's important for us to see what they got going on down there as well. But that's what I want to encourage Black and brown folks to do, is like, we are a national bunch of us, like, right? Use your cousins, find your community cousins, and connect with them appropriately, whether they may be in Montana. I'm gonna be honest, I've been talking with people and they're like, you got land in Montana. I didn't know Black people were in Montana. They are, and sometimes they got their land there, but they're not. And it's now time to revisit these places that are finally starting to turn on for legalization. But
they better have an electric fence.
For the animals.
People that behave like animals as well.
Okay.
But you know what? With that being said, I am getting really spicy. So, it's getting towards the end of the show. And we got to keep our eyes on these states, because there are even more states that's like, wait, that's online? That's online? That's online? So this season seems like it's going to be filled with states that are ready to legalize.
I am ready for it. And like I tell everyone, my cannabis advocacy is global. So when you hearing me talk about Connecticut or you hearing me talk about Virginia, it's because it's not just all about Oregon and what's happening in the city that I oversee. I've got to see what is the precedent across the country, but we're also impacting. So I want to make sure they know what we're doing in Oregon, what we're doing in the city of Portland. And it's been important. It's important in the New York bill. It's going to be important in the things that's happening in Connecticut. It's important in Texas. And so, yeah, make sure you recognize that, yes, take care of your home, but cannabis legalization is a global issue, and cannabis equity is a real global issue, because if we do not come to the table with the conversation, it will not be had. That's facts.
Period. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me again, Big Sis, and doing She Blaze and really giving everybody the tea. I'm still riding high off, Mr. Pimp My Ride. I'm like, I cannot believe it, so I'm definitely glad we got into all the juicy things in the cannabis industry.
Well, okay, so I guess we got to tell people where they can find us when we're not on She Blaze.
Yes, right. Well, really, you're going to find me in New York doing like a real serious mission, okay? Because my personal life is real crazy. But you can also follow She Blaze on IG. You can listen to us anytime on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, everything. So, and follow us on Instagram as well.
Wow. Well, of course, I am always excited to join you every week. And, you can always find me at Dasheeda Dawson on Twitter and IG. Sometimes I fall off on IG because
our personal life is real crazy.
The personal life is crazy, but I'm happy for all of the movement and all of the work. And of course, I'm happy to be joined by you guys every week. I will see you next week, Ice, and let's have a fantastic one, okay?
All right, bye.